works exactly the same as connecting the V, as connecting the SC within the app, so you no longer need to go into your Wi-Fi connection. So I'm gonna connect onto the camera I've got in this studio. Okay, so welcome. You can see me here. This is the Theta Z1. This is the prosumer and the Ricoh range. It's absolutely fantastic. Love it to pieces. It does RAW, it does JPEG, it does 4K. 3 stops in it, so you've got 2.1, 3.5 and 5.6. If any of you have been shooting on the Theta V, certainly in countries where there's really strong UV light, you're going to have to crank your ISO down to 64 or 80, whichever is the lowest one it does. And then you're probably going to have to make sure your shutter speed is super fast just to kill some of that light. So it can be quite hard to control. Where with this one, you've got the aperture within the camera. Second off, it does shutter speed, so this can be quite interesting if you're experimenting with light. So if any of you are astrophotographers and you've got like no light pollution, go and do long exposures out there. Or even if you're doing sport, you can crank this up to get some in-action shots. So it becomes quite useful as a photographer. Obviously the ISO range is quite big on here, so it kind of goes up to 6400. And it goes down to 80. So we're completely in the dark. I'm just going to put it back up to 400 so you can see me. If I go up to the cog setting, we have different shooting methods. So we have interval shooting, we have interval composite, we have multi-bracket, so we can set the shot within the frame. You'll notice a setting here called CT setting. That is actually the color temperature settings. I always have it turned on just so I can play around with the color temperature. If you're not so confident with that, then make sure that you turn it off. File format is RAW, DNG and JPEG, and then the other option is just shoot JPEG. You will notice that on the camera, if I put it onto JPEG, it goes back up to about 2,392 images. If I have it on RAW, this drops considerably and it's just showing me at 344. But you cannot download the RAW to your phone, so you will need some kind of like PC or Mac. And I recommend using Adobe Lightroom, which has a plugin from Ricoh that will help you stitch your images in. Hello, there we are. Okay, and then if we click back in the film setting, so I'm going to hit rolling on my camera. There we go, we are rolling. And you'll notice that my image disappears. So when we're shooting a film, we cannot see what's going on right now. And this can be a bit of a problem for directors because you're kind of blind shooting. So that was recording in full HD. This camera, however, does 4K. So if I go back into my setting and I go down to video size underneath the CT setting and choose 4K, you want to shoot in 4K. This does result in you losing like an amount that you can record, but certainly when you have your actors or whatever you're filming around the camera, they'll stay in focus. But if you shoot in HD and the people walk away, they actually drop out of focus, where you're not getting this so much with the 4K capabilities on this camera or the Theta V. Again, settings are exactly the same. So your aperture is here. It can close your shutter speeds, obviously. Generally, you will want to shoot on a 160 for regular movement. Keep your ISO as low as possible if you're in manual mode. If you're not a manual shooter at all, that's totally fine. There is auto, and it does a fab job, there we go, at working out what it kind of roughly needs to be. The biggest thing that you will need to know about this, it is setting of stitching during shooting. The question is, do you want the stitching during shooting on, or do you want it off? Now, it's debatable. I personally think you should have it turned off. And if you have the capabilities to be putting this through Adobe Premiere and through the Theta app to stitch it, then do it there. Don't do it all on your phone. I've had a bit of a problem in my previous productions where I've allowed the stitching to be turned on and this fine line appears just over the stitch line. It's usually at the back, and you have to go for a process of kind of masking this all out, which can be a bit of a problem. So ultimately, keep stitching during shooting off.